What are the most critical factors that you've seen in helping people achieve their productivity and performance and potential?
It starts with awareness.
Eric Partaker, the CEO coach, one of the top 30 entrepreneurs in the UK, 35 and under, and among Britain's most disruptive entrepreneurs by the Telegraph.
You have to literally leave your ego at the door and strip things back and not be worried about admitting that you struggle or have issues with some of the most basic things. Because I think at the root of anyone trying to perform at a peak level in whatever it is that you're trying to do, whether it's business or anything else, your achievement is a function of time and effort spent. And I think a lot of folks, like a basic thing that a lot of folks probably need to admit, but maybe struggle to admit, is that their time management and their productivity, isn't where it needs to be. And we have to be very, very wary of that.
All right. Okay, well, Eric, really excited to chat and also try LinkedIn Live. Hopefully it's actually broadcasting, but I thought it'd be cool to try this with you.
Well, likewise, I'm definitely considered to know a thing or two about LinkedIn, but I've never done this before, never used it before.
Yeah. So first time for everything, and hopefully it's for folks who are tuning in, it's an enjoyable experience. Eric, for me, getting to know you has been really special. I remember the dinner we had in Lisbon. It's still one of the best restaurants I feel like I've really been to. And since then, it's been a pleasure to be able to work with you and collaborate with you in different capacity, and also just admire the work you've been doing on productivity, people development. We have a very shared kind of passion around that. So thanks again for taking the time.
Yeah, likewise. It's been awesome, right? We're doing so many different things together now, right? So I'm an investor in the company and thinking about new product ideas and new ways to kind of, bring education to the workforces together. So yeah, it's very cool, very exciting.
Yeah, and every time we chat, we have more ideas. So that's all great. In this episode, I really wanted to dig into the work you've been doing and what you've been learning from that. I guess maybe the first question I would ask is, you are really deep in helping people reach their full potential, helping them reach peak productivity, performance, and coaching CEOs and so on. What got you into this world of people and talent development?
Yeah, well, it starts with the fact that when I look back at the first half of my career, I had really no idea what I was doing. Everything felt super painful. I had this horrible feeling that I was trying really, really hard, but not playing the game that I was capable of playing. And when I started to talk to more and more people professionally, I realized that was like a shared feeling that actually the vast majority of people, I think, professionally and personally, don't think that they're playing the game they're capable of playing, that there's a gap between their current and best self. And I think it's pretty much almost like a universal feeling. I mean, actually, Abraham Maslow, the preeminent psychologist, he came up with Maslow's whole hierarchy of needs. For those that aren't familiar with it, basically that human beings pursue different needs, kind of going up through a pyramid. The first level needs are safety, shelter, security, things like that, and it's like love and belonging. But that our path to deepest fulfillment comes from operating at our fullest potential. So it's this shared thing that we all want. I think the problem for most people, and certainly the problem for me, as I referenced in the first half of my career, is that you have this yearning, this incredible desire to play the game that you're capable of playing, but you just don't know how to do it. And so it's, I guess, it's ultimately born from this belief that we all share this kind of universal pain, suffering, at the same time, optimism and ambition to get to this higher level, which can be different for every single person in terms of what that higher level is. And and in a funny way, by working on yourself to kind of improve that or close that gap for yourself, it gives you insights that then have, mass applicability. And that then, led to the various things that, I'm doing these days.
And your story, I think for me, especially resonates in the sense that, my interest in human development comes from the immigration story. And my parents, I think, spent most of their lives trying to create the sort of the base levels of Maslow's hierarchy. Right? They didn't even have the luxury to think at the higher level in many ways, and gave me the opportunity to really try to aspire to sort of build sort of my needs across the full layers. So that really resonates. As you've done this kind of work in so many ways, you coach CEOs, you lead programs, you're writing a book on, ultra productivity. What are the most critical factors that you've seen in helping people achieve their unique productivity and performance and potential?
Well, like so many things, point number one is it starts with awareness. So it's one of those things where you have to literally leave your ego at the door and strip things back and not be worried about admitting that you struggle or have issues with some of the most basic things. Because I think at the root of anyone trying to perform at a peak level in whatever it is that you're trying to do, whether it's business or anything else, your achievement is a function of time and effort spent. And I think a lot of folks, like a basic thing that a lot of folks probably need to admit, but maybe struggle to admit, is that their time management and their productivity, isn't where it needs to be. And these are completely different things. So to think about it very, very simplistically, managing time. So if I think about a 7-day calendar, weekly calendar, I can manage my time well in that I can identify the things that I should most focus on and create blocks of time in my calendar where I will work on those things. But then that appointment with myself comes up where I'm supposed to be thinking about strategy or, I don't know, developing the product in some way, shape, or form. And during the 2 hours that I had allocated to that, my mind could go into a million different places. I actually don't focus on what I thought I was going to focus on. And the 2 hours end and I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, where did the time go? And I actually have to go into my internet browser and look at the history to retrace my steps to understand, where the time in fact went. So these are like fundamental, basic things that I think it starts with, people, having awareness about them. So what that means is that you have to be really brutally honest with yourself, and make sure that you don't commit. There's this thing called fundamental attribution error, which basically says that when something is not right for ourselves, fundamental attribution error, and it's a human condition, means that the average human being will point to an external reason as the cause for why they are not where they would like to be, or things aren't going well for them. But if you're looking at another person, let's make up a name, John or Mary, and it's like, well, why is Mary not where she wants to be? Or why is John not where, he wants to be? When it's another person, we go, oh, it's something about Mary, or it's something about, John, right? That's leading to that rather than, an external thing. And we have to be very, very wary of that. And and just be deeply honest about where are we versus where we would like to be, and how much of that is actually being driven by us not doing rather fundamental things rather than something else outside of us.
I love that you started with the awareness point, and that really resonates with me. It triggers a follow-up question on my end. In my experience, I could hear the same statement or recommendation someone makes to me to improve myself. Like, for example, I've gotten the recommendation to improve my sleep quality by introducing sleep patterns for so many years. But there's a moment in time where that advice actually hits and makes me want to do things differently. Whereas other times I kind of hear it and kind of lose it. My sense is that in your program, you have to you're probably thinking a lot about engineering moments that really get people to feel inspired to change. So that they take the advice that you give them, actually act on them. I'm curious if you have any best practices on how to really prepare and inspire people to change.
Yeah, so definitely. And you mentioned in your program. So I have a couple of programs. So one is I run this thing called the Peak Performance Program, which is literally it's targeted mostly towards just about everyone that participates is a business professional in some capacity, but it targets that gap. All the participants in that program are trying to close the gap between their current and best self, because all your frustration, disappointment, disillusionment, anxiety, tends to live in the gap. The wider the gap, the higher those things are. And what I've learned is that, so when I was growing, so I'm 48 years old. And when I was growing up, I remember a big phrase, from my childhood was knowledge is power. And and it sounds great. And knowledge is power. And, OpenAI is certainly going after that. But in this day and age, knowledge can be acquired so cheaply within seconds. It's not really where the power lies anymore. I mean, certainly for certain professions, for example, if you want to become a doctor, there's like a baseline amount of knowledge that you need to just get a ticket to the show. But for most of us, though, knowledge is, it's just not where the game is played anymore. It's about translating knowledge into action. That's where the game is played. It's not like, can you prompt chat GPT in the right way, although that's important. It's more like, but what do you do with that quickly accessible, fine-tuned information? How quickly can you apply it to your profession, your job, whatever it is? So with that in mind, knowing that it's the application which is actually most important to win or to succeed, then if you're designing a program or if you're trying to teach others and help them learn, the most powerful thing you can do is just make it ultra easy to apply. And so then that lends itself to, what is the practicality in that which you're teaching? What are the simple steps that people can execute? And then taking this down to like another level, I think even when people focus on application and trying to come up with practical tips so that they can get people to, as quickly as possible, experience the benefits of whatever it is that they're teaching, there's a tendency to boil the ocean, just to heat a cup of, a cup of tea. And you have to take an 80-20 approach. I can't teach. So for example, I have in September, I'm launching, I've decided to take the one-to-one, I'm still doing the one-to-one CEO coaching, but I'm going to create a CEO Academy and just help so many other CEOs that I don't have the chance to help right now, upskill very, very quickly. And there's so much that I could be teaching them, but I only have 12 weeks. And so I have to take an 80-20 approach in that, what are the 20% of the topic areas, which will create 80% of the improvement that they're seeking? And then within each area, what's the 80-20? What are the 20% of subcomponents within that area that will create 80% of the movement that they're seeking? And then make sure that everything being taught has ultra practical application. So, and you have to make it easy for people to remember. And so, I mean, let me give you a very, very simple example. So a lot of people would like to be more productive. If you ask a room full of people, how many people here wouldn't mind being more productive? Nearly every hand goes up, right? It's almost like ubiquitous. Where a lot of people go wrong, though, is that they fail to recognize that a productive day never begins the day of. It begins the night before. And it begins actually the evening before by shutting your day down correctly. And so what I tell people is, you need to sedate yourself, and but not with a glass of wine or a beer as people typically do, but with the acronym SD8, but pronounce sedate. And the S is a shutdown routine. You need to end your day by determining what are the top 3 things I'm going to do the next day, and where in my day will I schedule those things as appointments with myself. The D is a digital sunset. Why? Because most people don't get enough sleep, and you can't be productive if you're not well rested. And the research shows that people are on their devices far too long. And so a digital sunset, the concept there is that an hour before you would like to go to bed, such that you can get 8, that's the 8 hours of sleep, you turn your devices off. It's shown to increase the melatonin production in your head by about 2 times, which leads to, more restful sleep. So that's an example of, so what's the thing people want to become more productive? How do I make it ultra practical? Narrow their focus to how they end the day before, to become productive the next day. How do I get that to stick? A very, very simple acronym, which contains within it a simple framework: sedate, shutdown routine, static appointment at the end of the day, digital sunset, devices off an hour before you go to bed, such that you can get 8 hours of sleep. So you need like super ultra practical things like that, pretty much in everything that you're doing to really get concepts to stick. Why? Once again, because knowledge is not power. It's the application of the knowledge that truly, creates the power. We all know what to do. Everyone knows what to do. But are you doing it? And keeping things simple, practical, 80-20 in nature increases the odds of actually doing it.
I actually love how you articulated that, and also the example that you gave. It's from, in the L&D world, there's a kind of a similar battle, I think, going on, which is it used to be deliver as much content as possible. Content is king, right? But now people are saying, okay, well, content's everywhere. It's no longer the thing that's important. And the concept of 80-20 being applied to learning and saying, okay, for learning to really work and for it to stick into human mind, you got to make it simple and you got to make it practical, and really focusing on what's the 20% of the thing that's going to drive the impact, I think is such a critical mindset to have in learning. And so it really resonates, and it's something that we also try to embed into the things that we do. But I think you the way you do it with simple frameworks and sort of the way you use the sedate framework, that brilliant. Okay, that's very cool.
Yeah, and it applies to. I have a lot of books behind me, and when people see these books, they go, "Oh my gosh!" Like it almost makes them feel down, right? Because they're like, "Oh my gosh, have you read all these books?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't read all these books. How on earth would I have time to read all of these books?" But I take an 80-20 approach to reading. So if I'm reading a book and I'm like, this is kind of getting the gist of this. Okay, well, I'm going to skim through it and identify very quickly the 20% that's going to kind of inform 80% within that topic area, meaning I'm willing to sacrifice the other 20% so that I don't have to spend 80% more time, right, on it. And similarly with when you're looking at anything, you need to be able to look at a body of knowledge and go, you need to be able to know, okay, that's in the 20%. No, this is in the 80%. I'm not going to spend any time learning any of this. Is it valuable? Yes, but it's about leverage. And I don't want to spend in a particular topic area. Again, I want the 20% of stuff that's going to help me move 80% in that topic area. And then if I spend 80% more time to learn this other 20%, well, I could have moved on to another topic area by that point and done an 80-20 there. And you will never learn everything. It's like absolutely impossible. And this is like another whole thing too. I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, but I think this is worth mentioning. There comes a time like in a human life, especially when you're trying to play at the top of your game, become all that you're capable of being, where you need to transition from consumption to contribution. And what I mean is that, um, in the first half of one's career, you're trying to like get your hands on everything, because it's almost like you're approaching development from this place of lack. As if I'm a Lego character and I'm missing an arm, and I need to get this arm on, so that I feel complete. And then suddenly you're that same Lego character, but you transition to contribution, where it's like, no. Anything that I learn is like additive. It's not completing me. I'm already complete as it is. And actually the primary way to learn then is to contribute. And you contribute by sharing, by teaching. And when you do that, you get a 2-for-1. You more deeply, scientifically proven, more deeply embed whatever it is that you're teaching for yourself, more deeply. So you learn that more, whatever it is. But then you're helping someone else at the same time. So I at 48 years old, I already have a ton of stuff in my head. I need to get that out there. And even if that means that I'm learning less new things and just more deeply embedding some of the timeless things that I already know, that's okay. And I think so, where people are, especially if, somebody listening to this, you have to ask yourself, like, where are you in your career? Are you really still in consumption territory, or do you need to start just getting out there and contributing more in whatever form? And that's quite liberating too, because then you can look at the sea of books and all those things out there and be like, yeah, I'm sure there's some good ideas in there, but I already got tons. So.
I also really like this. I love the distinction you make on consumption contribution. My feeling also has been, especially once you're an adult, you've been in the professional world for a while. The people that I've seen grow the fastest have a much tighter loop in just going out and doing stuff, and then learning and integrating, and then going back out there. And if you have a consumption mindset, then you spend a bit too long just like reading up theoretically and academically, and not actually practicing and being out there. And what I loved about also the point about contribution is, when you share and when you tell it to other people and so on, you make really deeper connections between what you already know, but then someone else says something else, you're like, oh wow, okay, I actually see it differently. It becomes like really rich and much more ingrained. So I love the idea of contribution, so consumption contribution, like in context of development, which is not something I have heard about.
And that's a great point too about just getting going. Like you think about physics, right? So an object in motion, tends to stay in motion. How does it work again? Unless opposed by an equal and opposite force, or whatever it is, right? And just getting moving, right, creates momentum. And you don't need to have the whole path laid out. It's like driving a car at night. So it's night. I'm driving the car. I need to go, I don't know, across the city. I can only see with my headlights like 50 yards or whatever it is in front of me. I can't see beyond that. But as every second passes, I process what I'm seeing and use that information to determine what am I going to do next. But I didn't have the journey all mapped. I didn't know exactly when, left, right, more gas, less gas. I only need to see, 50 yards or whatever it is, ahead of me, and that's good enough. And, when you think, for example, about things like strategy formulation, and this is especially applicable to the 0 to 1 space, so like, startups, early stage scale-ups. I always tell people, like, you need to, and this applies to strategy for your life too. You need to, I always think strategy is like notionally conceived and then organically executed, in that I need to know generally where I'm going, but then my strategy is dynamic, and it happens as a result of the things I bump into, the things I see, the wrong turns that I take, the great turns that I make. And I share this because it should be liberating, so that people can get moving more quickly and not think that they have to have it all figured out. it's like just have a sense of direction and remember the headlights at night and just get moving, and the path will emerge, as you progress. And then tying this back to peak performance, one of the biggest inhibitors of peak performance is perfectionism, which is nothing more than procrastination in disguise, in that people take far too long to make decisions, make a move, because they don't have perfect information, or they're not exactly sure how it's going to pan out. Who will ever know that? But again, you just by moving and focus on progress rather than perfection, again, the path emerges and the strategy, develops.
That really resonates. I guess on that point, what best practices have you seen in helping perfectionists get over their perfectionism and get moving?
Okay, so so it's 2024. I remember back in 2017, I used to do this journaling exercise where a quarter would end and I'd look back and ask myself what went well, what didn't, what went well, what didn't, what were my key insights / learnings, and what will I do next quarter as a result. And I remember in 2017, I had identified perfectionism as the number one thing that was holding me back. And it just meant that I sat on the fence on too many things too long. And then when I would start to move, I would move too slowly. None of which is good for reaching your full potential or for, operating at your best competitively. And this goes back to 80-20 once again. But what I came up with was I realized that I had to operationalize 80-20 on a daily basis and treat it like a verb. And so I set up a WhatsApp chat with a friend. And for a year, we on a daily basis, to kind of train this muscle, had to share one thing that we had 80-20'd in the context of that day. And so what I mean is you had to do one thing daily where you acknowledge that you only had put in 20% effort to get an 80% result, meaning that you sacrificed perfection purposely, for the benefit of speed. Because perfectionists move slowly. And even if they do move quickly, it comes with a lot of unnecessary pain, anxiety, and frustration. Probably no sleep. That's how it was for me. And so it was simple things like, I might say to my buddy at the time, I 80-20'd the board meeting notes. So instead of, taking 4 hours to write up notes from a board meeting, I did it in like an hour or whatever. Or I 80-20'd an analysis, and instead of spending 5 hours building out a model, I spent an hour and kind of felt like it was directionally accurate and it's enough to kind of make a decision. And when you just look for things that you constantly, especially if you're out of time, 80-20 is great, especially and anti-perfectionism, especially when you don't have much time. So it's like, that you need to get something done at the start of the day. You had anticipated it was going to take 2 hours. You got caught up in some other things. You look at the clock and you're like, crap, I only got 30 minutes left. Okay, well, how do I 80-20 this? 20% of effort, 80% of result. Another question that I find that can help too is like, what if this was easy? Because when you struggle to 80-20 something, or you're in a perfectionist state, it's typically because you're overcomplicating it in some way.
That is incredible. So now you did this for a year or something like that, you said. What changed? Like, is it just that you became more comfortable with it? It became a habit, or did you gain some insight that you actually kind of distills from that experience that has changed your way?
Well, I mean, ultimately, all of this stuff relates to plasticity and, neural pathways. And, any human being behaves the way they do because they've essentially conditioned certain neural pathways in their brain, when cause happens, this effect, so it's like, it's just, cause, effect, cause, effect, cause, effect, and, habits, and this manifests in ways that people don't realize. such as if they develop a habit for perfectionism or procrastination, then when a large body of work or a challenging task is presented to that person, they kind of develop the habit unknowingly of going, oof, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? It feels painful, and so they put it off. And you have to just develop new neural pathways. So, with that one as an example, you train yourself when the overwhelming task is presented in front of you to be like, bring it on. I love challenge like this, which feels very, artificial and fake at first. But again, the more you behave in a, what fires together wires together. And so the more you behave in a certain way after a certain thing happens, even if you're having to kind of fake it at first, you do groove a new neural pathway over time, and then that becomes the norm. So going back to this example of the 80-20, because I was constantly forcing myself to come up with one thing that I would 80-20 on a daily basis, which was not natural to me at all, over time I changed the wiring of my brain where it became natural. And what felt like very arduous and clunky just became very fluid and smooth. And now, I'm just, I pride myself in. Sometimes I'll be working, I'll be like, oh crap, I only got 6 minutes left. I'm like, I bet I can bang it out in 4, whatever it is. And you just keep doing that. You keep surprising yourself with just how much you can get done when you believe that you can, and you learn to focus in the right way. But all of this is like, none of this was how everything I'm talking about right now. This is like the 2.0 version of me. I was the antithesis of all of these things up until the age of 33. So I'd say about 15 years ago, I started to gradually make changes. And when you don't think in these ways and you hear something like this, like to some people, they might think, because I know if my 30-year-old self was hearing somebody talking the way that I'm talking right now, I'd be like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. But I don't think like that at all. I'm really broken. That's how I would, have thought. But I can tell you that you can totally rewire your brain. You can totally change the way you work. You can totally change your level of productivity, focus. You were born a blank slate. And at any point, you can erase the chalkboard and rewrite whatever you want. It does take more effort once, certain patterns get ingrained, but they can still be rewritten.
The one thing that I've always found really remarkable about you is your incredible discipline. And I saw that it happened in so many ways, like your life story, and also just how you've really built your presence on LinkedIn and with all the content you produce, and how you help people, the programs you launch. And some people might say, well, you were just born with that discipline.
No, but I was the antithesis of discipline. I was even that. I'm so glad you bring that up. I was the most undisciplined person on the planet. That is in no way a born trait. That is something that I built. I intentionally manufactured. It came out of a mine of laborers hitting away, with sledgehammers on rock, and out suddenly came discipline, after a decade of work.
What were some of the mechanism or the support you had to build that? For example, you mentioned the friend you were texting to keep you accountable. I'm curious if you had a few of these factors that helped you go from undisciplined to disciplined today.
Yeah, well, a lot of it is mindset. A lot of, we talked about what can make learning successful. Another thing that I've observed that makes learning more successful is when you can help someone realize that whatever it is that you're teaching, that they already know somehow, that they already are practicing it in another area of life, or they already used to do it. And so they're not having to do something new. They're just having to remember again. So let's take discipline as an example. So Marcus Aurelius, in his journal Temptations, he writes that something about the impediment to action becomes the action. The obstacle becomes the way. And what he was referring to is that when we hit these roadblocks, these things that we don't know how to get through because of a lack of discipline, we might think that, I need more discipline to achieve this, whatever that is. And actually, no, you need that to become more disciplined. And this conceptually is very important to get. It's not that you need more discipline to do the things you don't want to do. It's that you need to lean into the things that you don't want to do to become more disciplined. Because if you think the former rather than the latter, then you will wait around your entire life waiting to become more disciplined. So the very things that you want to be more disciplined for are the ways you become disciplined. I've said that a million different ways now. But let me give you an example. So nobody walks into a gym and says, I'd like to get into the best shape of my life. Can you please point me in the direction of the most comfortable weights? Like that's never been thought of before on the planet. Nobody says that. And this gets back to my point about, to make learning easier, you have to get people to realize that they actually understand whatever it is that you're teaching and apply it and do it already. So taking the gym analogy again, if somebody wants to become stronger, they have to lift weights. So the resistance, the things that are heavy, become the way to become stronger. I don't become stronger and then I can lift the weight. And so now if we go back to discipline, so if we think of discipline as a muscle, so it's not that, it's not like you don't have a bicep, like your bicep is missing from your body and that's why you can't lift a dumbbell. No, the bicep is weak. It's not that you don't have the discipline muscle in your body. No, it's the discipline muscle is weak. So how do we make it stronger? Well, we need resistance. We need to lift weights. So what I would suggest that people do, and what I did, is list out all the things that you wish you were doing and then reorder the list, from light to heavy, and treat it like a gym, and lift the lighter things first and then the heavier things over time as your muscle strengthens. But the important thing here is that you can't expect whatever it is that you want to be disciplined toward to suddenly have no weight whatsoever. It's the equivalent of somebody's presenting a weight to you in the gym, and I don't know, because you think that it's going to it represents resistance, you run out of the gym screaming or something. I think it would make no sense. You have to lift that weight. So don't require it to be anything but what it is. It's heavy, whatever this task is, completing your tax return, whatever it might be. And just recognize that, but it's by lifting that weight. That's how I strengthen the muscle. That's how I become more disciplined. Starting with the lighter, moving to the heavier. Now I've gotten to the point where I can lift the heavier things, but I didn't start that way. I started with the tax return, with the, I gotta, clear out my inbox, things that the lighter lift, but that, we don't have always the discipline to do. So,
yeah, the gym analogy really hits, and it's a really interesting way to think about not just exercising your physical body, but your mental body in a similar way. I'm realizing we're at time. Eric, this was really insightful. We went from talking about the need for awareness to taking an 80-20 approach to building discipline, and you shared so many nuggets that I was like, I hadn't thought about it that way. But really surface mindset shift that I even want to bring to things that I do and how I want to incorporate into our learning programs as well. So thanks so much for sharing that. And This is why people love your programs. I can see.
Yeah, yeah. You got to keep it practical and make it feel attainable. Yeah, and that's better for the teacher and the students. And yeah, thanks very much for having me. If you've been listening and you like this sort of thinking, or the practicality of things, then I'd say definitely do head over to my website at ericpartaker.com, because you can I do a weekly, one simple email every single week that provides ultra practical tips like this to help level up in work and life. And so you can kind of subscribe there. So
amazing. Thanks, Eric.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. See ya.